Hey everyone, welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to be looking at the interview that I did with my former student named Jeremy. He was a tremendous student who worked really hard in my class, and it's been such an experience catching up with him and learning how his life has been progressing after high school. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. Aside from your current work right now and what you do, what's consuming your life? What are some of your hobbies and whatnot?
Yeah, big hobby of mine I've kind of recently found is like live events. So like just last night I went to a comedy show. Been living that recently. So if there's ever kind of an opportunity, I always jump on a concert, sports game, whatnot.
Right.
Something to keep me out of the house, especially when you're working,
Mhm.
remote or hybrid. It's definitely important to not just sit in your basement all day and play video games when you're done.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
definitely getting out of the house,
Mhm.
working out, keeping active, things like that.
Out of all your live events that you attend, what would be your favorite type of events to go to?
Hmm, that's a good question. Mainly, like I watch sports,
Right.
so like hockey, basketball, and football, and then
Mhm.
comedy shows and concerts.
Yeah.
Out of all three of those, I've been to a lot of sports games, so I say I'm more kind of familiar with that.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite experience was I went to a Dallas Cowboys playoff game earlier this year,
Nice.
and that was crazy experience. There's
Mhm.
everything's bigger in Texas, right? There was like
Yeah.
120,000 people there, and it was just unbelievable compared to what we have here, right? And I thought
Mhm.
like a $20,000 or sorry, 20,000 person stadium was huge. So
Yeah. So, how did you end up getting like did you just fly out to Dallas to watch them play? Like how did that happen?
yeah, no, it's an interesting story. So back to we're about a year and a half ago, I was working at Rogers,
Mhm.
and we can kind of go into this later, but I was kind of looking to leave,
Mhm.
and I just updated my LinkedIn profile and all that. And then I would get reached out to by jobs and people hiring,
Right.
and there's a lot of scams, a lot of BS, right? When you get those kind of
Mhm.
messages, and I got one that kind of caught my attention,
Right.
and it was for a digital marketing agency, which a lot of scam companies are digital marketing agencies, but it's not. You know,
Mhm.
100% of them, right?
Right.
So I was very skeptical, but it seemed pretty cool. And I went through the interview process. Turns out the building's actually like 10 minutes from my house, so it was legit and everything.
Mhm.
And their headquarters is in a suburb of Dallas called Irving. So
Nice.
they flew us out for training there for onboarding for 2 weeks, and that was in January. And we got the chance to go to Texas. So I made sure we made the most of it there with my kind of onboarding group. So we went to Stars game, Mavericks game, hockey, basketball, and football, and the Cowboys as well.
Mhm.
So we made sure to do all that, which was pretty cool.
To start this interview off, do you just want to like look at the camera, introduce yourself, how we know each other?
No, yeah, sure. Yeah, so my name's Jeremy Turco. I was in Mr. Park's grade 10, I think in grade 11 too,
Mhm.
computer science class at school that will be unnamed,
Yep.
and yeah, had a pretty good time. Awesome teacher,
Oh.
amazing kind of lessons we learned, funny stories and all that, and it was a very very memorable class. Definitely probably my favorite,
Thank you.
and my favorite teacher too. And I'm not just saying that because this is recorded. I do mean that. So
Let's start off with your education because I think you had a very interesting education background in your LinkedIn,
definitely.
which um, I am so interested in what you're doing right now because I think it's the modern way to do things,
Mm.
right? But I wanted to get your take on it. So, can you talk to me about your education journey so far from um, grade 11, COVID starting, and then going to university and whatnot?
Yeah, yeah. So grade 11, kind of got saved by the bell. I had all the hard courses up in semester two. I think I had math, physics, I want to say chemistry and computer science.
Yeah.
So I was in for definitely a ride. And then obviously COVID happened. And I don't remember all the details. It was a couple years ago, but the thing that really kind of stuck with me and everyone else I remember was
Mhm.
they said, after I think like March 20th, whatever it was, like your grade won't go down.
Mhm.
Which, if you tell a 16-year-old who doesn't really care about school that their grade won't go down, there's no incentive to do anything. I'll
No.
just be honest with you, right?
Mhm.
So that was pretty tricky
Right.
because I had, we would do like little quizzes and all that in your class and other
Mm.
classes. So you'd
Yeah.
have like a stupidly high average of like 95 because it was
Mhm.
just like a little, write your name and today's date quiz, which I probably got my name wrong, so that's why I didn't get 100. But right, so your grade wouldn't go down, so there was no
Mhm.
incentive to kind of learn, which obviously screws you up for next year, especially
Right.
if you. I didn't end up taking computer science,
Mhm.
as a major or anything, but if I did, I'd be completely screwed, right?
Mm.
Because I'm getting I got a great grade 10 education, but then grade 11 and 12 definitely did not happen.
Yeah.
So what happened was I literally did nothing all year pretty much.
Mm.
Had my good grades, took that into university with me. I did work, I would say, decently hard in grade 12.
Mhm.
But I do remember that since I didn't do any of the work, that physics class and computer science were a struggle.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that prerequisite, and I ended up switching up both of those courses,
Mhm.
which I don't regret because it's not something I pursued. It was more of like a hobby of mine.
Right.
But if I did want to pursue it, then that would have been a really big problem.
Mm.
So I don't know if that was. I'm not going to blame the school for that
Right.
because I didn't do any of the work. So
Mm.
it's on me.
Mm.
But it was just definitely an interesting experience.
Mhm.
So after school, I still in grade 12 didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I
Mhm.
remember I attended the. Don't remember exactly what it was called, but it was at the Toronto. I think, a Metro Convention Center, and they had
Right.
like the Ontario University and College
Mhm.
convention there, and I was gearing towards going to computer engineering,
Right.
which is why I did the physics and the computer
Mhm.
science and all that. It was more of like a I love computers, I love hardware and all that. Not necessarily I love math and science, which was never my forte, which
Mhm.
obviously no one does. But
Right.
um, yeah, in grade 12, it's that was kind of what turned me off from it was all those kind of math and science heavy courses.
Yeah.
So I stumbled upon something I think a year before called user experience design, and that really
Mhm.
stuck with me.
Nice.
I've always been someone who was, curious. I would always ask questions or
Mhm.
ask why and be inquisitive about things.
Mhm.
And for me, design was not only like, picking colors and shapes and making things pretty, which
Yeah.
a little bit of it is, but kind of
Mhm.
the philosophical discussions around what a product does, how it helps people, and why it's designed that way.
Yeah.
And that was really cool to me.
Mhm.
So I started learning about that a little bit before school, and it turns out Wilfrid Laurier had I think at the time it was about 4 years old, and it was the
Okay.
only undergraduate program, I think, in Canada that offered
Mhm.
UX design. So that
Awesome.
was like kind of a home run for me.
Yeah.
Um, However, to be 100% honest with you, I did not like learning in school. I
Yeah.
did not love it, especially during COVID. That was
Mhm.
brutal for myself and many others.
Yeah.
So that was a real struggle. Was I felt like I had to go to university because like what else was I going to do, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm not going to get a job from doing Coursera courses and YouTube learning, right?
Right.
So I went to Laurier. The problem with that was I went to the secondary campus, which if you ask some people was fine. For me, it wasn't so great.
Mm.
To be honest with you, I had a terrible experience with that.
Okay.
It seemed very half-assed. All the like um, not extracurricular activities, but all like the social aspects were closed. It was COVID. Lots
Yeah.
of, if you ask me, BS restrictions on,
Mhm.
you can't have friends over to your dorm. You have to wear masks inside like elevators and things like that, which at,
Yeah.
at the time, this was like a year after COVID. So it was a
Mhm.
little bit excessive if you ask me.
Right.
Um, yeah, I didn't find that the learning was amazing. Even my first year courses, I understand that this is true with a lot of universities, but
Okay.
for me, like I was, doing design as a major, and out of my 10 courses in my first year, only
Mm.
4 of them were design courses.
Right.
I had 2 philosophy courses,
Mhm.
2 criminology courses, and 2 other courses I couldn't even remember what they were.
Right.
And that really upset me because it felt
Mm.
like I was looking at my,
Mhm.
I don't know what you call it, but like the kind of timetable of your 4 years.
Yeah.
And all of the good courses I want to take were in third year.
Mhm.
And my 1 year of co-op, which was like really, really the highlight of, doing that program,
Right.
was in the fourth year of school.
Mhm.
So I was thinking, well, I could if it was the third year, I could just, suck it up and do my second year and then have a year of co-op, which would have been amazing.
Right.
Um, or I could not. I could drop out, which is what I did.
Mhm.
Which, if you ask me, was I think right now, looking back, it was the right decision for myself.
Mhm.
There was a kind of a lot of soul searching to be done because I didn't really know if I still wanted to do design. I honestly had no idea what the hell I was doing.
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing was I I guess I dropped out. I just technically didn't even enroll my courses. I don't even know if I
Mhm.
technically am even dropped out to this day. I still have the email and all that, but
Right.
whatever. So I was just looking at how else can I pursue this dream of being a designer. So at first it was, a lot of YouTube, learn a lot of self-taught things like Coursera and all
Mhm.
those kind of certificate programs. And they do have good information, but it can only get you so far.
Right.
No one cares if you have that on your resume.
Mm.
No one at all. Um, that was a bit tough.
Right.
So if we're taking the timeline here, this is about 2022 April.
Okay.
So I stopped going. I kind of enjoyed my summer. I was working part time, but I did want to actually get meaningful job experience because what I
Right.
found was I really did like working, and I felt
Mhm.
like I learned a lot better doing tasks and being hands on rather than theory based,
Yeah.
remote especially.
Mhm.
Um, so I want to find a job that I could, maybe not a design job then because I was trying to get for co-ops and internships, and I was applying to hundreds and hundreds of jobs, and I didn't hear back from a single one,
Yeah.
except for one that was like there's a little bit of nepotism, to be honest with you. Is I
Hey,
think a
that's
family
great.
friend. Yeah,
Hey,
I didn't get very far. I didn't get very
okay.
far, but I got the
It
interview.
doesn't matter, man. Like if you
Yeah.
get in, you get in in this state right now. Yeah.
hmm Yeah, I don't remember what company it was for, but it was an interview. It didn't really go anywhere,
Mhm.
and it was very discouraging. Like I applied to hundreds and hundreds of jobs, and I'm thinking either I have the worst resume ever, which I didn't think so, or there was
Mhm.
something brutally wrong with my like ATS formatting, which I thought could have been the case.
Mhm.
Regardless, I ended up working at Rogers part time in
Nice.
retail, and that I really liked. So that
Mhm.
was really fun for me.
Yeah.
Um, I found like I was working retail before, but this was a bit different. It was a lot more sales focused, and
Yeah.
if you're working at like a bank and or like a store like that, you have quotas and you have targets, and you do actually have like kind of responsibility, right? It felt
Mhm.
like it does actually matter because you're commission based. If you
Yeah.
perform harder, then you get more money. So it's
Mhm.
definitely an incentive.
Nice.
Same thing there. I was kind of still searching about my education,
Mhm.
and I stumbled across these boot camps where you can get a kind of a college level diploma in,
Mhm.
I don't want to say like a get rich quick kind of thing, but it would still take about a year, but you'd get a
Yeah.
diploma. And that was something that I saw valuable because you do get
Mhm.
hands-on experience, you get an actual like certificate at the end or diploma that is
Mhm.
meaningful, and you
Yeah.
do get to work with companies that partnered with said boot camp.
Mhm.
Between the options, I'd ended up going with something called BrainStation.
Yeah.
They're pretty popular. They have lots of things for like data science, design, coding as well,
Mhm.
and they're located downtown. But the question was for me, it was, do I want to go downtown every single day, 9 to 5?
Right.
Um, the answer is no. I'm not
Mhm.
going to do that because I'm lazy. So I did hybrid online, which was a lot better. It was
Mhm.
I want to say Tuesday and Thursday from 6 to 8, and then like basically the entire day Saturday,
Mhm.
which no one wants to spend their Saturday 9 to 5 on school, but
Right.
you got to do what you got to do, right? So I
Mhm.
was working part time at Rogers and then part time on the UX boot camp there.
Right.
Um, the problem with me was I was spending all my time focused on my job and my other kind of hobbies rather than my school, and I
Right.
definitely did not. Excuse me, I definitely did not pursue it properly. I was
Mhm.
not working very hard, to be honest with you. Like I was getting the job done, but for the first time in my life, I was handing in assignments late, which was, I don't know if you remember, I would always hand in stuff on time,
Oh
every
yeah.
single time,
Even
never
early.
late.
You got
Yeah.
feedbacks and everything. You were a great student.
I
Mhm.
appreciate it. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. But yeah, even in university, like I was on the dean's list. Like I wasn't like a bad student or anything, but
Mhm.
I just, for some reason, I just like could not get myself to finish these assignments on
Yeah.
time. I don't know what it was. To this day,
Mhm.
I don't really know what it was. And my not professor, but the instructor, he was a tougher guy, and he kind of
Yeah.
he pulled me aside one day. He like kind of kicked me in the ass. He was like, "Buddy, like you gotta like actually like apply yourself and try,"
Mhm.
which was really true because I really wasn't.
Yeah.
And he's 100% right. He recommended a book for me to read, which is Atomic Habits, which I did read
Mm.
about a year later, but
Yeah. A good
very
book.
helpful,
Yeah.
fantastic book.
Yeah.
Yeah, which definitely helped me kind of get my priorities straight and definitely get my shit together. Excuse me.
Nice.
But yeah, that was really helpful. I think I squeaked by. I don't know what the official mark was, but I think I was like 1 mark from passing, which for
Mm.
me was very shocking because I'm used to like
Oh.
never getting under like a 75 for
Yeah.
anything. So that was
Mhm.
very, very shocking for me. And I think it was at that moment I realized I can't do school anymore. Like I just gotta
You're right.
I gotta start working. I gotta get a job, even if I'm starting slower.
Mhm.
Um, that's kind of what I have to do.
Yeah.
So we're now at about 2023 May. So I was graduated.
Yeah.
Still working at Rogers, and I wanted to get a UX job. So I was, doing my due diligence. I worked very hard networking on LinkedIn and doing all those
Mhm.
kind of steps, my resume, etc.
Right.
Oh man, I must have applied for 600 jobs,
Yeah.
right? Like no joke. Every
Mhm.
single day I was applying to, as like if there was a job posted, I applied to it
Nice.
basically, right?
Mhm.
Um, Same thing. I heard basically nothing back. Like I don't think I got like a single call for anything.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, well, what the hell is going on with this, right? Because I
Mhm.
remember like on the initial pitch for the school was like, I don't remember what the number was, but it was something like 90 or 80% of the people who graduate end up getting a job.
Right.
Um, but what I didn't realize was those are the people who like actually busted their ass and
Yeah.
attended every single after session and did
Mhm.
this and that, which I didn't do. So I
Mhm.
can't really blame anyone but myself. Um, that was when I got that message. I don't know if this was in the recording, but when I was reached out to by a company on LinkedIn who was doing digital media advertising,
Yeah.
and I said, well, maybe this design thing for me is going to be more of a hobby for now,
Mhm.
and I kind of got to put it in the back burner and start making some real money, I guess, and actually get job experience.
Yeah.
Um, so I was like, at Rogers, I learned so much. Like it was a fantastic job. I
Mhm.
loved all my coworkers,
Yeah.
but when you work for a big company like that, you get stuck really easily. Like
Mhm.
for me, there was no trajectory there. It was,
Yeah.
oh, I could be a store manager there if I
Mhm.
if I really wanted to. I could have been, and I would
Mhm.
have made probably like $5,000 more than I was making as a rep, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do that.
Mhm.
And I met with the C-suite actually because our store was performing fantastically. Like I think we were the number one store in the country at one point.
Mhm.
And I met with all the very very high level people there,
Yeah.
and I told them my concerns. I was like, hey guys, like listen, like we're like literally the number one store in the country right now, and like no one really like feels like it.
Mhm.
Um, I don't want to, crap on them too much because
Right.
I did learn a lot, and it was a really good company to work for. The
Mhm.
benefits and all that were great, and they did treat us pretty well.
Yeah.
But it felt like they didn't kind of trust us at the end of the day, and I wanted to work in an environment which I felt really valued, and
Yeah.
felt like I was actually making a difference, and that people were, relying on me, and I had expectations. So I decided to take that offer from the company, and flew to Dallas, watched a football
Mhm.
game. It was pretty fun. I can't complain,
Nice. Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so the same thing there. Learned a ton, right?
Mhm.
So it was a lot different job than working in a mall and waiting for old people to come up to you and ask them to help you with their WhatsApp and Facebook
Right.
logins, right? So
Yep.
this was a little different. I was doing business to business sales for advertising, so
Mhm.
calling companies and offering them digital marketing solutions,
Right.
and yeah, it was a lot of cold calling. I'll be honest with you.
Mhm.
If it was a little bit of a boiler room kind of culture there,
Yeah.
and everyone was great. Same thing.
Mhm.
It was fun at times, but expectations were intense. It was a bit of
Okay.
an intense environment.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it was a really really great experience for me. So
Yeah.
learned a ton, and I just decided that I like sales and I love talking to people. I love helping people and making those connections, which is
Yeah.
kind of why I want to be a designer in the first place.
Mhm.
But to be honest, like it was marketing. Like I never really had a passion for it. Never really cared about it, to be honest.
Right.
And then I saw myself. I'm like, I'm gonna kind of get burned out here really quickly. So I
Mhm.
was kind of looking for some other jobs. I have a list of people that I've made connections with over the years. I worked at Rogers and these companies and everything,
Yeah.
or friends, family, whatnot. Ended up calling someone that I did business with at this company,
Mhm.
and it was a startup.
Yeah.
They're located in Mississauga,
Yeah.
and I sent my resume and I said, hey, like if you or anyone who's looking for someone with a design background or sales background is hiring, let me know.
Mhm.
Gets back to me within like an hour. He calls me. He's like, hey, like I'm actually looking to hire a designer and a salesperson,
Damn,
and
nice.
so I could hire you and
Mhm.
save save half the cost, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. So long story short, I ended up going there.
Mhm.
It was a startup. It was a smaller company.
Right.
They do like real estate technology. I'm not gonna kind of get into specifics here.
Mhm.
Um, so I left that job. I took that job,
Nice.
and it was fun because it was a lot of autonomy, which I really liked.
Mhm.
I was the head of sales and the head of design, right? So I
Damn.
kind of made all the decisions and all that.
Mhm.
Fast forward about a month, company goes bankrupt,
Damn. Okay.
which I should have known
Mm.
because a company goes bankrupt within a month, right? So
Yeah.
they knew, but you win some, you lose some, right?
Yeah.
So now I was really looking for a job. So
Right.
then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do some more due diligence before I join this company because it was really short-sighted on my end to just kind of take the first thing that came to me because I was
Mhm.
kind of looking to start something new and leave.
Right.
So I really took my time here. So I really worked on my resume, really worked on LinkedIn, did all these
Mhm.
kind of everything you could to kind of sell yourself and whatnot.
Yeah.
Same thing. I applied for close to maybe I don't know, maybe 1,000 jobs for
Mhm.
sales. I was like, you know what, let's kind of um, retire in the design front for now, and let's just focus on like the sales and the business development and that kind of
Right.
um, you know area for now.
Mhm.
And yeah, I heard sales companies are always hiring. So if you submit your resume, you're going to get a call back. So
Mhm.
I was getting a lot of interviews. I was probably getting like three, four, even five a day sometimes. So I was basically doing a
Wow.
full time job of applying for jobs and doing
Mhm.
interviews for about a month, maybe about 6 weeks or so.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of companies that really you know I liked.
Mhm.
Got really far with a lot of companies.
Right.
I had 5 interviews with a couple of companies, which is, if you ask me, is insane and ridiculous.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I got a couple offers, and I finally kind of, after there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of debating, and a lot of, hey, can I get 1 more week to accept this, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. So I just started actually this company on Monday,
Mhm.
and it's something I really wanted to do. So it's
Right.
a software company, which I like.
Yeah.
It's still modern, it's fresh. It's like
Mhm.
a, I was like a final stage of a startup. So it's a big company now, but they still
Mhm.
got that really kind of team building environment and all that kind of
Nice.
culture.
Mhm.
Um, it's only been a week, but so far
Mhm.
it's been pretty cool.
Nice, nice.
And yeah, that's definitely something I'm, looking to stay with, because I've been kind of bouncing around,
Mhm.
um, pause for a while now.
Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted to find a job where I can stay at. So hopefully for, a couple years at least.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's a different position for me. It's customer success, which is kind of halfway between sales and support, which I like.
Right.
It's not that environment where you're kind of, shoving products down people's throats. You're engaging with existing clients who, making sure you're retaining that relationship with them, things like that.
You said you had to really work on your resume. You had to really work on that part to start applying for jobs. So can you expand on that for because my grade 12s and like my students in high school, they're not going to know anything like that. Like their only viewpoint is, oh, I go to
Mhm.
school and I'll get a
Yeah.
job. Like they don't have that soft skills or and they don't know how the industry works. And if you can talk about the interview processes as well, that'll be super helpful for them.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I don't think I had a LinkedIn page till I was out of school, or sorry, out of high school. I was like, I don't like social media. Like, I have like Instagram. I don't post anything. So
Mm-hmm.
when it was content to make a LinkedIn, I'm like, I don't need this.
Yeah.
This is stupid, right? Turns out you do need LinkedIn. Not
Mm-hmm.
for every single job, especially for sales. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, like you absolutely 100% need a LinkedIn page.
Yeah.
Um, it's because it shows your story, right? So you could be a fantastic candidate for something. You could ace the interview, but if you don't get the interview, then it doesn't matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if your resume is shit, then no one's going to choose you, and they won't even hear you out. So it's important to have, a great profile, a great, doesn't have to be like paragraphs and paragraphs about you, just quick things, especially if you're like in a sales position, just like, achieved X quota and then Y, it's like simple stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But just making sure that you kind of stand out. So
Yeah.
there's, especially you would apply for jobs that are remote, there's
Mm-hmm.
people from all across the country and even the world who are applying. So it's really
Yeah.
important you stand out. In terms of the resume, what I figured was, especially this is the tricky part. If you're in grade 12, you don't have that experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like my resume in grade 12 was, I don't know, I worked at like a deli for 2 weeks, and I worked at like, I don't know, I was doing newspaper deliveries and
Yeah.
whatnot, right? So there's not much you can put on there,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really kind of maximizing what you do have. So I think at
Yeah.
the time I was working at, like Winners and Home Sense part time,
Mm-hmm.
but really accentuate kind of what you did there. So I could
Mm-hmm.
easily just wrote like, yeah, like I was a cashier,
Mm-hmm.
but no, I actually did take a lot of initiative. Like I was helping like scheduling things. I was working in the warehouse. I was doing this and I was doing that. Kind of
Right.
just set yourself apart. Really kind of showcase your strengths.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying lie, but you could embellish a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of
Mm-hmm.
make it a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's really important to have that online presence. You don't have to post on LinkedIn. Like I don't really post anything, but
Mm-hmm.
making sure you kind of keep up to date. Like, like you said, like you saw my LinkedIn, and it does a decent job explaining kind of my story.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of context there,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's really, really good to get your foot in the door. Also, you do get a lot of people who reach out to you on LinkedIn. I got a
Mm-hmm.
job from LinkedIn from someone who reached out to me, which was
Yeah.
pretty cool, because that's something that would never have happened if I didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
As for the resume, my resume has gone through so many iterations.
Mm-hmm.
I actually did. I didn't like, hire them. Like I knew them from somewhere, so
Mm-hmm.
I got them to give me like a professional resume.
Right.
At the time, it wasn't much to do, so I don't really blame her.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't a ton of material to work with.
Yeah.
But I ended up, I think every 6 months or so, I completely changed my resume, and I'm like, wow, this is like the best resume ever. And then three
Mm-hmm.
months from now, I'm like, this is shit. Like, wow, like there's so much kind of to do.
Mm-hmm.
So much stuff you can improve on, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to kind of be a nerd and kind of sit on your computer and do courses all day, but definitely soft skills are really important
Right.
during the interview process. So
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn tells you a lot of things on how to kind of, ace the job interview or questions to
Mhm.
ask, things like that.
Yeah.
Um, when I was looking for my job, I was doing so many interviews. Like I was doing at bare minimum like two a day.
Mhm.
And even if I didn't really like, sometimes I'd see the job and I'm like, I'm probably not going to work this company. I would just do
Mhm.
the interview for practice anyways. So I've
Mhm.
probably done like 100 interviews, and like
Yeah.
when someone says, "Tell me about yourself,"
Mhm.
there's a way to answer that question.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to say, "Oh, I'm Jeremy. I like sports. I
Yeah.
collect Pokemon cards." Like no, like
Mhm.
you're supposed to tell your story. You're supposed to tell like your strengths and that.
Yeah.
So making sure you kind of use that time wisely, and
Mhm.
making sure you're personable, making sure that people like you. So, for example, I had when I was doing design, I had a design portfolio.
Mhm.
It's kind of hidden now,
Yeah.
but on that page, what I really spent a lot of time was, which my friends thought was stupid. I
Mm.
had kind of an about me section,
Mm.
and there it was kind of personal. So
Yeah.
I had like my favorite movies, my favorite sports teams, my favorite kind of playlists, and
Mhm.
someone that I actually did get an interview from, they said they actually really liked that page because
Mhm.
it tells them a lot about you, and you don't have to really ask that question.
Yeah.
And he said to me, like verbatim, basically, I have my Spotify playlist there, and he's
Mhm.
like, I don't want to hire someone and sit next to them for 8 hours a day if they suck and
Mhm.
they have shit music taste. So I'm glad that
Right.
we can get along with that, right?
Yeah.
So finding things in common with people,
Mhm.
relating with that, I think is really really helpful as well.
Awesome. For my students, they're not going to know what customer success role is all about. So, could you give
Yep.
us a breakdown of what you would do?
Yeah, neither did I until 2 months ago, so no worries. Yeah, so it's customer success is it's a pretty new position, and it's typically for software companies, especially very modern software companies.
Mhm.
So how the kind of funnel will work is depends on the company, but sometimes you'll have a marketing team which will get leads
Yeah.
from, I don't know, maybe a conference or like a Google ad. You get people who are willing to buy the product, will click on that, and they'll typically get a call from, a sales rep there,
Mhm.
whether it be a random cold call or kind of a warm call. So if you maybe engage with like an advertisement or something,
Right.
so you kind of get them in the funnel there. That's
Mhm.
typically like what I was doing before, which is called like a sales or a business development representative.
Mhm.
From there, let's say, everything is great. They buy the product. They spend, how much money it is in the subscription, let's say.
Right.
Then typically that gets passed on to like an account manager, which is
Mhm.
typically the person who is, let me kind of backtrack a little bit. The sales development representative is typically the person who's doing the intro, kind of quantifying if it's going to be good or bad for them, kind of
Yeah.
giving them the pitch. And the account manager is usually the or account executive. All these terms are semantics. Every single
Mhm.
company defines
Mhm.
them differently.
Yeah.
Um, they're typically the person who's actually kind of closing the deal, sending the contracts, and asking kind of those critical questions and doing all that kind of stuff. And then typically, it depends what kind of company you work for. For my company specifically, then your account gets passed on. When I say account, it's the customer
Yes.
gets passed on to something called customer success. So let's say they sign up for a 2-year term. For that 2 years, I would have let's say a group of like 20 to 30 or 40 clients, whatever that I work with.
Mhm.
So any kind of questions they come to me, they want to buy anything, they want to renew, they just want to see if they're updating or getting someone to explain them new features.
Right.
That's what I would do. A good way to put it is for example, customer service. Like let's say you order something for Amazon, you have a problem, you call them.
Mhm.
Customer success is proactive. So it's going to
Right.
be before they have a problem. You're the
Mhm.
one who makes sure they don't have a problem. So
Yeah.
you're going to tell them everything they need to know, and help them, train them on everything.
Mhm.
And then at the end of the day, you are also responsible for making sure they renew the product or kind of um, so upselling and cross selling. So let's say they
Mhm.
have one product, we'll get them on product B or product C as well.
Right.
Um, it's a mix between sales and support, I would say.
I know you just recently started this role, but what would your typical day look like?
Yeah. Once I'm out of training, so I'd have about, let's say, 30 or so
Mhm.
clients on a kind of basis. So I would book meetings with them. Typically, you want to meet with each client as need be. Sometimes it could be once a week, every two
Mhm.
weeks, once every 3 months. It depends.
Right.
But you do want to anticipate those concerns. You want to be actively reaching out to them
Mhm.
via email and calling or messaging on LinkedIn. Lots of research on the companies and the people you're
Mhm.
doing business with before, making sure you know their company, you know know what they sell,
Mhm.
what questions they might have, things like that. So I would say it's not like a job like I was doing before, where I was calling 100 people a day,
Mhm.
kind of grinding, working nonstop. It's a lot
Yeah.
more kind of methodical than that.
Mhm.
So lots of research before and planning those meetings. Typical day to day, maybe you'd have two customer calls that are about 30 to 45 minutes each, and then the
Mhm.
rest of that you are answering emails from other clients, maybe a quick phone call, or doing research on new products and new services we offer. If you want to
Mhm.
talk about the day to day of, like, for example, a sales development representative, which I was doing before,
Mhm.
that's a lot different. Same thing, depends on what company you work for.
Right.
Typically, they would give you a list of, like, I don't know, maybe every single day you'd have a list of 50 people, and you're
Mhm.
expected to do a couple minutes of research on each of them, call every single one of them,
Yeah.
leave a voicemail or an email, and keep going. Kind of, it's very, it's more of a grind than this,
Yeah.
but yeah.
For me, user experience is all about like designing the best possible interaction for the users to use your product or your service, right?
Yep.
Um, do you find yourself applying that philosophy into everything that you do with sales and potentially customer success? Like, do you find yourself using those skills?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I notice it every single day, whether
Hmm.
it's work related or not. Like just
Hmm.
before this call, I was trying to cancel some, like, credit card I have, and I'm like, oh
Right.
my god, this is impossible. They probably
Hmm.
do that on purpose, but
Yeah.
in terms of work, yes, absolutely. Especially with when you're doing sales, you want to make sure that you're understanding clients' needs,
Hmm.
and you're making something easy for them, and you're
Right.
helping them, which is literally the exact same thing as design.
Hmm.
It's almost the same job, just in a very different form,
Hmm.
because the principle of the job is the exact same.
Yeah.
So finding a solution and helping people, and what's the best way to do that,
Hmm.
is the same for sales, customer service, design, and customer success, in my opinion.
Hmm.
So that's anticipating questions, asking in-depth questions. So for example, when you're designing a product, you typically have like a focus group or a one-on-one session with designers,
Yeah.
and you observe how they interact with the product, things like that,
Hmm.
and you ask them questions about it. It's the same thing when you're, calling, doing a cold call, and you're asking someone about their, strengths and needs of their businesses, and problems, things like that.
Hmm.
So it's very, very similar.
5 years from now, where do you want to see yourself?
But it's a good question. Probably in a kind of managerial position.
Mm.
Something I really wanted to do was kind of be a director of onboarding.
Yeah.
It's also, they call it sales enablement too, is the kind of like the training team for sales companies, which I think
Hmm.
is really cool.
Yeah.
At my jobs previously, I've always, even though I've always been kind of like the newbie or the rookie there,
Hmm.
I've always been really kind of um, I've really enjoyed helping people start and, get
Hmm.
started, and training them. So
Yeah.
when I was at Rogers, we had a couple people start on just even like a couple months after me, and I
Hmm.
really enjoyed helping them and training them, things like that.
Hmm.
Which is very similar, same thing. Like it all kind of connects to
Yeah.
customer service. You're helping people, especially
Hmm.
service and customer success. You're training people on the product itself and
Right.
features, things like that, versus, you're helping them with learn about the company, and answering questions, things like that. So definitely, I would like to maybe not lead a team of salespeople per se, but lead a team of kind of onboarding kind of new people to the company, I'd say.
Looking back to like your high school self, right? Um, if you had a chance to talk to him again or talk to any high school students again, like what are some advice? What are some things that you would like to tell them?
hmm Um, hmm. I remember, kind of a little bit off topic, but I never studied for any single test before grade 11.
Hmm.
So I literally would just do the tests, and I was I don't want to like be an ass, but like I was like a pretty smart kid, so I didn't really have to, work too hard
Yeah.
until grade 11 chemistry kicked my
Mm.
ass. I
Hmm.
I got like a 40% on my first quiz, which was like insane for me.
Yeah.
Um, and that really opened my eyes to, like, okay, well, if I'm actually gonna do this seriously, like I
Hmm.
can't just go in here with my eyes closed, and do these quizzes. So really applying myself.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to put this in the video, but you don't have to study every single day for high school, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot about kind of, being with friends, being social, things like that. I think that
Hmm.
was really important.
Hmm.
I wasn't going to parties every single day, or, whatever, but
Right.
I think I did, have a lot of fun in high school.
Hmm.
I think that's really important, because um, you don't want to be someone whose, entire life was based in high school, and,
Yeah.
peak in high school or whatever. But
Right.
it is important to kind of set yourself up good for university. For
Hmm.
example, if I did want to do computer science and engineering, and I didn't give a shit about my marks in
Hmm.
grade 11 or 12 like I did, I would
Hmm.
have been completely screwed.
Right.
So really making sure that, like, yes, you want to have fun and you want to enjoy yourself, but
Mm.
it's a little early, but start thinking about that goal,
Hmm.
especially because Yeah, like if I didn't want to do design and I went to school for computer engineering, my first year would have been a rude awakening. That would have been brutal. So
Right.
I'm glad I kind of got myself on the right track. But think of what you want to do. Doesn't have to, you don't have to be super stressed about it. I remember I was dreading like choosing and applying to my universities. So that was
Mm.
something that was really stressful for me because I didn't really give it any thought.
Mhm.
And I wasn't really kind of worried about it until it was like, oh, this is the deadline to apply.
Yeah.
So, making sure you're being proactive and
Mhm.
exploring different things. Like it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but
Mhm.
watch some YouTube videos and different careers, take kind of career quizzes, and try to look a little bit more in the future, I would say.
Right. Um, and do you recommend to students to try out multiple jobs anytime they have the opportunity?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I don't know exactly what you mean by like try out jobs, but if there's like ever a take your kid to work there or things like
Mhm.
that, or like a job fair or any kind of videos, like you'll see like a lot of time people do like a day in the life of X or
Yeah.
whatever, where if you just look up people's experiences on like I don't know Reddit or something,
Mhm.
definitely see what kind of sticks out to you
Mhm.
because when I found out kind of like for me when I went to do computer engineering, I was like, oh, I can just like make graphics cards. I
Mhm.
wasn't even thinking about what even that means, right?
Mhm.
And then I was looking at the day to day. I'm like, okay, well, this is not for me.
Yeah.
Versus kind of when I wanted to design,
Mhm.
I saw that day to day, and I'm like, that's something I would much more like doing.
Nice.
Um, you want to make sure you're doing something that actually doesn't make you want to kill yourself and makes you
Yeah.
excited to go to work every day.
Mhm.
So if you have a job that you really don't like, it's not gonna go well. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
you have to love what you do and it's like your dream, but it's
Mhm.
something that's is fun for you, right? So for me, like when I was doing like sales, it wasn't like the number one thing I ever wanted in my life, but it was
Mhm.
fun and I
Yeah.
did enjoy doing it. And it's as long as you can do that, then I think
Mhm.
you're set.
Yeah. For me as a high school teacher, like what can I do better?
The problem is what I'll be honest with you, as a kid, I don't want to say dislike teachers,
Mhm.
but as a kid it felt like teachers would complain a lot.
Mhm.
However,
Mhm.
what I realize is the good teachers never complain.
Mm.
It's always the teachers who are lazy and don't actually care about their students and
Yeah.
complain every single day that complain about their job.
Mhm.
But the few good, like I can count maybe like 5 or 6 teachers I've had that I've really, really enjoyed,
Yeah.
being in their class. And I don't know, man. Don't
Mhm.
don't I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah.
Like personally, like there's a lot of teachers I didn't like,
Right.
especially at that school.
Mhm.
But yeah, I can tell you like firsthand that like everyone respected you in the class and everyone enjoyed going to your class. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of teachers where I wouldn't say that to. A lot of teachers that would talk shit behind their back and
Yeah.
whatnot. But yeah, because it
Mhm.
seems like you actually really do care.
Mhm.
First of all, you were the only teacher that let us kind of write notes before a test, and that seemed really fair. Because a
Mhm.
lot of times you'd have especially in like classes like English, like it felt
Mhm.
like you're just doing these tests for literally no reason. Like it
Right.
just doing this to fuck with you basically.
Mhm.
But it felt like you actually were doing the test because you actually wanted us to learn.
Mhm.
Because it's not like you're going to go to a job and all of a sudden they're like, okay, take away your calculators and computers and you're going to do this test for us. That's not how like life works. What you,
Mhm.
what you did was actually kind of prepare us a little bit for the real world and making
Right.
sure we understood. Definitely went above and beyond, I'd say.
Wow.
And you made a kind of personal connection with us, which was really helpful.
Mhm.
Like when you go to class, you have an hour a day for what 6 months. You spend a lot of time with
Yeah, yeah.
teachers. Sometimes it felt like we didn't know any of them,
Mhm.
but I don't remember how often it was, but you'd have kind of stories. And you'd have like that PowerPoint, and that was really
Yeah.
memorable. Like I remember like a lot about your class,
Oh,
and
yeah?
there's some classes where I don't remember anything. Like I'm like I don't even remember what the teacher's name was.
Mm.
But yeah, I do remember your class. It was probably the most memorable one I had.
Aw,
So
thank you, thank you.
I'm not just saying that.
Thank you, thank
Promise.
you. Then,
Also, sorry
yeah.
to interrupt, but like
Mhm.
teachers don't do this, right?
Mm.
Like I haven't spoken to any of my teachers since
Right.
like I left their class, other than
Mm.
this one right now. So
Yeah.
this is crazy, right? As soon as I
Mhm.
saw that post on LinkedIn, I'm like, I got to do
Yeah.
this, right? So.
Mhm.